I'm Fredrik and I'm the filmmaker.
And I'm Leilani Farha, and I'm the advocate.
And this is again Pushback Talks. And,
That's true.
And we're co-hosts of a podcast.
We are.
Which now hit 148 countries.
Amazing.
One of the latest is Palestine.
Yay.
And others, which is
Hey,
cool.
I have news for you.
Yeah?
Well, you had news for me, but we have news for the world. Push is going to play in Palestine.
In Ramallah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Super cool.
That's cool.
Not till next year.
The film is playing in many countries almost every week, and if you want to show the film in where you are, just contact us. And sometimes even Leilani can come and speak online to you if she can find time. Anyway, in Push the Film and in the podcast, we are scouting around trying to understand what's cooking in the world, especially in the space of housing, but also in this development of inequality that is kind of so strong in the world. Now, remember we'd said when we were out with Push that there was so much money floating into housing. So in the end, the only place you can live is a place where there is no jobs, no public transport, and no service. And then you think, oh, a trailer park in the US or mobile home, that's the world out where okay, you could go out there and sit far away from everything, then maybe you can make it. But now what happens? Mobile parks are the only segment of real estate that grows stronger as the economy weakens. Quote the New Yorker. Leilani, what do you say?
Yeah, well.
Mobile homes, that's where you can make money. Put your money there.
It's crazy and very, very predatory.
The Financial Times writes, manufactured housing is a hot commodity. A hot commodity. Isn't that cool? Put your money somewhere.
Hot.
It's hot. Anyway, this is what we're going to talk about. Mobile homes, and it's also called, what do you call them? I mean, more formally?
Manufactured homes?
Manufactured homes. Yeah. Of course, we have a guest and somebody who knows a lot more than us. And this is Paul Bradley, who is in Concord, New Hampshire, with us today. So, Paul Bradley, you are the president of Residents-Owned Communities in the U.S. Welcome to Pushback Talks.
Good morning, and thank you. It's great to be here.
So I see that you've been an advocate for people in mobile homes for a very long time, and you're helping people to kind of get their homes out of the hands of these investors. But tell us a little bit, what is this? I mean, I hear 22 million Americans are living in this called mobile homes or manufactured homes. Tell us more about this world of yours.
Absolutely. Well, factory-built housing really took off in the United States in the 1920s. And significantly after World War II, very substantial number of travel trailers were built in factories and housed people, not just for weekends and week-long vacations, but permanently. And what happened is in the mid-70s, Congress woke up to the fact that, oh my goodness, we've got travel trailers that have grown longer, grown wider, and are no longer being moved place to place. And people are treating them as permanent homes. So we better do something. So in the United States, in 1976, was created a HUD code for factory-built manufactured housing, separate and apart from the recreational vehicle industry. And that segmentation, exists today. There are some plants, by the way, and some manufacturers that produce RVs, recreational vehicles, and manufactured housing in the same plants. That's how intertwined this is. But that was a very significant piece of legislation. And since 1976, the HUD code, Manufactured Housing Code, has continued to improve. So that today, these homes are every bit as good a quality as site-built housing. And you know this coming from Sweden, tremendous opportunities in factory-built housing. And that hangs out there as an enormous opportunity, both for affordable housing providers, but also those of us interested in environmental improvement in housing as well.
Paul, what I hear from you is that we should a little bit step out of the mindset of the trailer parks, the mobile homes we've seen in a lot of American films. That's how I know them. Eminem, the film about Eminem, he was living in a trailer park. That's one image of those homes. But there are also a lot of other homes that are stable and flowering communities and so on. Is that what you're saying? This is like 22 million people means that there are a lot of different shapes of this way of living.
There is, and what's interesting is most people are fixated on 1960s and 1970s trailer parks or mobile home parks. So their image and what's really presented in a lot of films, Fredrik, are older trailer parks. But those in the industry and many homeowners today experience a very different experience with this housing stock. But the challenge is that this industry is both of those things: travel trailers of the 1960s and 50s, and modern manufactured housing. It is all the same. Now, in terms of 22 million individuals who live in manufactured housing and mobile homes in the U.S., keep in mind about half of those, maybe a little bit more than half, own their home and also own the land underneath it on what traditional subdivided lots. The other half, a little maybe closer to a third, own their home, but they rent the land from a private investor. And that's really been the focus of our work, is helping those homeowners that own their home but rent the land to form a limited equity co-op to buy the land.
Leilani, I know we keep sending stories to each other, and you sent me a story about our best friends in the housing world, the Blackstone private equity fund, the biggest private equity fund in the world. Blackstone buying into mobile homes. So why is this alarming for you as a housing advocate?
Well, of course, I'm concerned about the 50 or so percent that Paul mentioned of people who don't actually own the land on which their home is situated, and many of whom are extremely low income. I think mobile home or manufactured home residents typically make less than about $50,000 US a year. And if you do the maths on that, a third of that on an annual would be like $1,300 available for rent. It's not a lot of money for rent if you're a family needing 2-3 bedrooms. And so what we're talking about is a population, that I'm concerned about, that's, low income, could be veterans, persons with disabilities, single mothers, immigrants, migrants. And then you've got this behemoth private equity mega capital zooming in to do what they do best, which is make money, reap profits, and really in a predatory way, squeezing off of the land every cent they can. Paul can probably talk about this much better than I can, but, increasing rents, but also increasing fees associated with having your manufactured home on the property. And it is Blackstone, but I think there's other big ones involved. Carlyle is a big private equity group.
Also, a Canadian company is big there, isn't it?
Brookfield, correct, based in Toronto.
You Canadians, you sell yourself as so friendly, but then you're so hostile. How is
so
that
true?
Yeah, it's like,
so true.
Yeah, it's kind of.
We just say, yeah, we'll take your money, thank you, please.
The American is a little bit more straightforward. Again, mobile home parks are the only segment of real estate that grows stronger as the economy weakens. What do we take of that quote, Paul and Leilani?
Well, Fredrik, you have to put yourself in the position of somebody who owns their home but rents the land. And while they might be called mobile homes and have a history in the travel trailer industry, manufactured housing today is not easily relocated. And so there is a significant opportunity to raise the land cost, the lot rent, and generate more cash flow and profits from ownership of the land. And I've been at this for a long time. I've been working with homeowners in mobile home communities for now 34 years. And, historically, local owners, people knew those in their communities, and this formula worked fine for a long while. Now, you always had a few bad actors that would take advantage, but it worked fine. What I've seen in the last 15 years, and really after 2008, a lot of financial sophistication came into the market, and these men and women were very good at assembling capital and running pro formas, and they found the little sleepy mobile home park business, and they found this dynamic of renting land to people who couldn't relocate their homes. And when you're sitting at a pro forma and want to go from a 16 IRR to a 20% internal rate of return or return on equity, very easy to do with Excel spreadsheets. And that's really what we've seen. And so there has been an explosion. We've always known private equity, real estate investment trusts in the manufactured housing community business. That's who's developed these properties, are private investors. But the financial sophistication and the desire or willingness to turn screws has really dramatically ratcheted up. And you know this from other podcasts, I'm sure. Private equity, has poured into the mobile home park business, but as it has single family residential here and all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, my film Push, we meet people in cities, in the poorest areas of the cities, and they suddenly, their homes are the best place to invest money. And we had Blackstone pouring into Sweden, into Denmark, into Poland, into Czech Republic, into everywhere. And always with an interest to going for the low-income homes, not to the bank palaces, the centerpiece buildings of the cities. No, to the suburbs. And this was like, oh, wow, this is happening. Leilani, this is like what we saw this, but could you at that point imagine that they will also be out there at the mobile homes?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, we were charting their patterns, and their patterns are to go where they can make money, and this is a ripe area for them to make uber profits. One of the things that's so important about manufactured homes in the States is, our listeners are reminded that the U.S. is a country that doesn't, as a form of state assistance, provide much in terms of housing. So mobile homes or manufactured homes become a go-to because there is no social housing, for example, available to most people. So that's very important. But I also want to note the incredible predatory nature of what Blackstone, Carlyle, Brookfield, and others are doing. I mean, if I read the article in the New Yorker that Fredrik, you referenced, and I mean, it's actually incredible, the thought process, the financial planning around this, right? So go to communities and buy up manufactured homes in communities where the tech industry has made life more expensive. That's a good place to invest. That's number one. Then they say things like, look for a park that's got high occupancy and that doesn't need a lot of investment. Take out any possible amenity like a playground or a swimming pool because that will require insurance. Make sure you've got a nice sign and make sure any maintenance costs get put on to the actual tenants. And regularly raise rents, but not so much that it would drive out desirable tenants. I mean, this is from the New Yorker article, right? So just completely predatory.
Paul, you're smiling here. I mean,
Nodding.
But it looks like this is your reality. I mean, it's extremely cynical. It's upsetting, I would say. But how do you see this? Do you meet this? I guess.
Well, It is a victory every day when we can help a group of homeowners form a co-op and remove these properties from the speculative real estate market. That's really, Fredrik and Leilani, where I go with this is, well, what are we doing in the marketplace to counter this? How do we roll this back? How do we deconsolidate what's been consolidated? Because consolidation is happening in all industries. And here in the housing sector, this little segment is very exposed to it. And it's not just here in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, all have this form of housing and this split ownership that's problematic, but yet tremendous promise because of the factory-built housing. So I'm highly motivated to, scale up and help as many homeowners form co-ops and buy their communities as co-ops. We're a network now of 302 communities, just over 21,000 homeowners, and we're hoping to double that in the next 8 years.
Wow. Yeah, so let me understand, Paul. In the U.S., what legislative protection do manufactured home owners have? Like, are they do they come under landlord-tenant legislation? And does that change if they manage to form these cooperatives that you were talking about? Do they have better protection?
So these are, as a general rule, landlord-tenant statutes in states. And of course, tremendous power rests with the landlord. I do not use the landlord-tenant frame personally. I think it disrespects hardworking people that have bought their homes. These are homeowners, and it's a community owner. And we need to balance the interest between those two as best we possibly can.
But sorry, let me just ask, could a manufactured home owner avail themselves of landlord-tenant law to protect their interests, or is there any other law they can rely on? Like, how do they protect against these big, huge actors?
Yeah, so let's just pick an example. This is based in state law now. In the U.S., this is real estate and state law, so it varies greatly depending on where you are in the country. Of course, many listeners will be familiar with California and probably respect that California is a heavily regulated market. Homeowners in California have far fewer exposures to things like change of use, community closures, and displacement. If you're in Indiana, however, legislation last year increased the notice period of a community closure from 30 days to 60 days. So as you noted, these are some of the lowest income homeowners we have in the country. Mm-hmm. And a 60-day notice to move not just your family, but to your home as well if you want to save it from the scrapper. So that would create tremendous instability for any family with any
those
income.
Notifications arrive to people. You have to move out in 60 days.
Yeah, that's the state protection for community closure. There was just a case here recently. So it really depends on states.
But tell me about this. I mean, you meet these kind of procedures where people get the notice. You met it recently, you said?
We read about that account. We aren't active as yet in Indiana, so we did not step in. But that's the difficulty with trying to solve this problem at the point of closure is the community's been disinvested in, and now it has a valuation based on an alternative higher value use, right? So very difficult.
Somebody sells the land, basically.
They're selling the land to a hotel or a grocery store, and you're competing with that to save a community that has been disinvested in, so water and sewer and roads and trees and homes and et cetera.
And that could have been people's homes for 50 years or 20 years.
I've met homeowners who've raised their children and now have their grandchildren visiting in their communities for sure.
And then they could get a notice out. And it would cost, I read somewhere, $10,000 to move a home.
Yeah, that's generally cited for a multi-section home, but that varies greatly by market. And also, wonderful book, Manufactured Insecurity by Esther Sullivan from University of Colorado. It really depends on what improvements have been made in the home. And you may know this from your factory-built experience in Northern Europe, but you even modestly change the home, say add tile tile in the bathroom, that home may not be movable because it was so tightly engineered to arrive on that site and be set. Modifications don't travel well and can end up bending the frame and ruining the home. So very difficult to relocate homes.
So people they have their homes, but they can also get kicked out. It's a very insecure situation. It's like,
Fredrik, those are the worst calls we get. We've been noticed, our community is going to be closed, and what can you do to help? And we've pulled a couple of rabbits out of the hat over our 38 years, but they are heartbreaking phone calls, and we generally don't have a solution. We've got to be upstream from that, which is why removing these from the speculative real estate market while they're still good operating communities is so important. And there's some policies, to your point, Leilani, that states can implement. We do have 6 states in the U.S. that have opportunity to purchase legislation. You might know it as tenant opportunity to purchase from some other markets. In multifamily housing, you've seen this. But these are, notices that give the homeowners a chance to form a co-op and match a bid from an outside buyer. And that's a very important tool if we want to remove these.
So this happens in some places, Paul, where like Blackstones and others are coming, they want to pick up this land. But you said, hey, in these 6 states, we have this legislation. Actually, you can now outbid them, or you can go before. So this is what you are doing. That's when you're entering then.
Yeah, so case in point, 2 summers ago, a 95 community portfolio was being sold. 2 hedge funds had taken this portfolio as a result of a lawsuit. So they managed them for a couple of years, and then they sold the whole portfolio to a small private equity firm. State of Colorado passed opportunity to purchase legislation just 2 years ago. And 2 of the communities out of that 95, because they got notice, because they were in Colorado, ended up purchasing their communities. So we helped 2 out of the 95 become resident-owned in Durango and in Boulder. 2 great communities and great groups. But it's only because the state had opportunity to purchase legislation, law, that those homeowners had any chance. But things are, that's attracting a lot of attention. We had a U.S. senator visit that Animus View co-op down in Durango, Colorado here 3-4 weeks ago. And this is definitely, rising up on the political spectrum because of the affordable housing crisis here and in many places.
Affordable housing crisis, Leilani. Have you heard about that one?
I've heard about that one.
Yeah.
There and everywhere. I mean, the right to purchase legislation I value as well, and I've seen it, as you said, Paul, in other contexts. The only drag is that it generally is, based on market rates, and you're pitting a private equity firm like Carlyle or Brookfield or Blackstone that can pay actually slightly above and are willing sometimes to pay, even though they're predatory, willing to pay slightly above market and can outbid anyone anytime, knowing that they know how to make profits off of land pretty quickly. And so it's not a really even playing field. So, there might be better legislation, like private equity
I think
should
that's
purchase.
what we've seen with Blackstone and the others, is when they sometimes enter with a higher bid, they pay more because they know if we pay more, the whole market will go up. So they're in some way they're driving the market up. So they kind of often overbid, which is very interesting. And it seems some people say, oh, why are they buying it so expensive? Mm-hmm. But then as they know, they also own a lot of other properties, they will also push up the value of the other properties. So in some way they're driving the prices themselves in a very scary way. Paul, Leilani asked you a question, and I forgot about it.
Well, just, are other kinds of legislation being contemplated besides the right to buy for the residents, which I don't mean to undermine that. I think that's super important. And look, it worked in 2 of 95 cases. I don't know if the other 93 didn't have the means, didn't have the wherewithal. Were the 2 that came good, were they generally with higher income people,
No, good question, and let's break that up a little bit. So I think of that portfolio, I think there were 10 or so properties in Colorado which has this legislation. The rest were outside of Colorado where there is no law that requires notice. Those just sold. Those just sold in the marketplace. We had a capacity challenge in supporting all 10, and the two groups that really got organized under a very tight time frame were the Boulder and Durango groups. We'll be in a better position to respond, in Colorado today than we were when we were then. But hey, this is this on the nonprofit community development side. This is capacity building. This is having the financial resources ready and available when you need them. The staff capacity ready and available when you need them, and when 10 properties hit you at once in a big state like Colorado, that's going to throw a wrench at anybody.
But it's also very good to have those stories, because this is inspiration to send out to other communities. Hey, the big guys might come and pick up your property. Get organized, and we talk to Paul, and he can help you to make a cooperative out of your homes.
Yeah, and we do have a increasing level of engagement in policy because there's clearly access to resources is critically important to support the communities that do want to purchase, and do it in an affordable way, because prices have gotten so high, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the affordability of these communities. But we also are looking at this from a market-based perspective. So we're currently in the final stages of developing a term sheet and creating our own social impact equity fund to acquire portfolios, because so much has been acquired, so much has been consolidated in the last 15 years that we need to really enter the portfolio acquisition business, where we can complete any new home installations necessary, but ultimately deconsolidate those portfolios and offer those properties out one by one to the residents. So it's our deconsolidation strategy. Super excited about it. It's going to be an opportunity for limited partner social impact investors to support our work and helping transition more of these communities out of the speculative real estate market.
Leilani, this makes me, thinking about Aaron Glann's book, The Home Wreckers, and we had Aaron here in the podcast, because after the 2008 crisis, when Blackstone entered into the housing market, they did it because the government was selling out homes, but in packages of like 1 billion per package, kind of. So people were not allowed to buy their own home. So, and Blackstone said, hey, we saved the market, we helped everything. But what if Blackstone have done what Paul's people are doing, actually selling the homes back to the people instead of, in that case, 13 million Americans lost their homes, and then they had to start to rent their own home. They paid for it once, and then they started renting it to a much higher cost.
Yeah.
That shows you that there can be different takes on how to move and to be in a society. And Blackstones are certainly not friends of homeowners or of the society, of democracy, of anything. They're just in there to grab as much as they can. Mm-hmm. Or do you have a different view on that, Leilani?
No, I have the same view. And I was thinking that, Paul mentioned that manufactured homes is in fact a very viable way to address the housing crisis, at least part of the housing crisis in many countries. They can be affordable, and they can be environmentally sustainable, made of environmentally sustainable materials, for example, and easy to transport, et cetera. And don't leave the same footprint that building does. And so on the one hand, you have this like totally viable, way of addressing the housing crisis. And then you have looming these predatory actors who will ruin it and who are ruining it. And that keeps happening. Every time governments talk with me about their ideas for how they're going to solve the housing crisis, I keep saying to them, and how will you keep the private equity at bay? Because we can dream many ideas, many incredible ideas, but unless we manage to keep these actors out, they will just invade the space because they too see how this can how it can generate money for them. So, I mean, I think I like the idea of playing with this and figuring out, okay, we've got this great model, and how do we make sure it can move forward as a model, as a potential partial solution, but keep those actors at bay. That's why I wrote the shift directives, which Paul probably doesn't know about, but but I'll send you a copy, Paul.
Please.
Was to figure out how to solve the housing crisis. Part of it is to keep those big actors at bay, to legislate.
Yeah, and our contribution here, Leilani, is to really operate in the shared equity housing space. And so I mentioned earlier, limited equity cooperative model is what we're scaling. And really it's a middle way solution. So the co-op is set up, and this is baked into the incorporation of the co-op. There's no profit motive in selling the land. That land is forever locked into affordable housing. If they were to sell it, the members would get back their very modest membership interest, and the proceeds would be donated to a nonprofit doing affordable housing in that market. But there's a reason why not one of our co-ops in 38 years has ever resold their community to a for-profit buyer, is because there's no profit motive in selling the land. However, we are interested in low-income people building wealth, and so they do sell their home in the marketplace to another household or family. And we want them to build equity in that home. It's a good thing. So it's a middle way strategy where the land is preserved long term. And it is, Fredrik, just as you said, these are modest size homes that are effectively 4 walls and a roof at a very small yard, which people can, park at their doorstep, literally, and walk right into their house with their groceries. And they have and I say small, there are lots in communities that are as small as 2,500 square feet, some as large as 10,000 square feet. But you're talking about a fairly dense neighborhood of detached single-family homes that are themselves modest size, many, in the 700 to 800 square feet, and then some of the larger multi-section homes can grow upwards of 1,800 and 2,000 feet. But that is, it's an important land use approval and an important modest size housing stock, at least in U.S. standards.
Can you help us to translate this into square meters, Leilani or Paul? I'm totally, oof.
No, I can't. And I should be able to, because my country switched from
Yeah, you Canadians are more
imperial to
civilized in
metric.
that way, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Well, we'll divide by 3, I know that.
I'm trying here to understand.
I think it is to divide by 3. So
I
one
dropped out
foot,
of math. So I
one
was
foot
totally...
is a third of a meter. So 10,000 feet is 300. 10,000 square feet is 300 square meters. Is that right?
Is that the ground?
Area.
The ground.
Yeah, it's not the house now. Yeah. Okay, that's a nice car.
No. Paul, were you saying that would be 3,000 square meters
would be more or less a 10,000 square foot lot.
Square foot lot, and then that's the lot.
Yeah, and houses low of 700 square feet, so call that 200 square meters.
Wow, that's big.
It's big, right? I mean, if you have an urban mindset, Fredrik, it sounds big, sounds spacious. In suburban and rural markets, oh, here we are, lovely.
We have little notes being sent to us. 3,000 square feet is 278 square meters. There we go.
Thank you.
Does that help, Fredrik?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a big home. Anyway, friends, this is like, it's so interesting. But I mean, Leilani, you say we have to keep the big actors at bay. And Paul, what are you telling your government? I mean, what is your message to the legislators here? Because it's all about laws protecting people.
We say two things. What Congress did for the housing stock with the HUD code in the mid-'70s to transition it from temporary to permanent, truly permanent housing needs to be done for the land ownership model, so that there's permanence to the land for these low-income homeowners. There are a variety of ways to get there. We're scaling limited equity cooperative ownership. Two, on the resource side, and I don't know if this is true in other places, I'll count on you two to tell me, but in the US, affordable housing is really looked at in two silos, either rental or homeownership. And lo and behold, these folks fall smack dab in right in the middle. And both sides, the rental subsidy people and the homeownership subsidy people, argue that these homeowners are not theirs. They belong to the other side. Go talk to the other silo. And so growing recognition that there's this homeownership on rented land problem. There are solutions, and we need to bring some targeted resources to solve this.
Leilani, and what is your message?
Well, I love that.
You actually talk to governments a lot, so.
Well, I mean, it's only for me to amplify the messages coming from the groups that are working directly on these issues and directly with the folks who are living the reality. And that's what I love about what Paul said at the end. People are living this reality, and legislatures should be responsive to people and their realities. And there is this thing called the human right to housing. And we have to figure out how law can be used to protect the human right to housing for people who are living in this in-between space. They're owner-renters. And so we need, as you're always saying, Fredrik, we need new language and laws to be responsive to the actual realities. I love that.
That's good.
I'm with you, Paul.
That sounds like a happy ending of our podcast. Any last word to our listeners, Paul?
You're welcome to learn more about us at rocusa.org, and happy to hear from folks around the world.
That's cool. Thank you very much for being on Pushback Talks. Leilani, 5th season, we're still going, and we're still learning. I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly I know a lot about things, and I met a lovely person like Paul Bradley, who is the president, resident-owned communities in the U.S., and he's with us from Concord, New Hampshire.
That's right. But seriously, this issue, I have to say, for lots of reasons, the manufactured homes community that's under threat really, it sticks with me, and I because it feels so predatory. And so I'm really happy to have met Paul and to have had this discussion. I hope we're able to work together. And
he works with a hot commodity regarding the says Financial Times.
That's right.
And it's the only segment of the real estate that grows stronger as the economy weakens.
Crazy.
My God. Let them burn somewhere. Thank you very much, Leilani. How do we fund this podcast?
We don't, but we're always looking for new patrons. So you go to patreon.com, look for Pushback Talks, and you can support us with a couple of dollars, a few euros, whatever your currency is. Every little bit helps.
And if you want to see Push the Film, you can go to pushthefilm.com, and there so you can watch it at home, and you will meet Leilani traveling the world. So it's all, that's one reason.
There you go.
And you might get some new language from Leilani.
Hey, I heard Push the Film is being used in courses in Egypt to instruct students. That's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
It spreads far and wide.
Hello to our friends in Egypt. Keep it up. And
a country I'm not allowed to travel to anymore.
No, they didn't like you when you were there. No.
No, they did not. They did not. I was declared by the parliament to be a terrorist and enemy of the state.
Yeah, as a UN special rapporteur. Yeah, you were arrested and you were quite scared, I remember, because you were chatting with me at the same time the police was
It's
watching
correct.
you.
On the side of the road.
Scary. Friends, thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Pushback Talks is produced by WG Film. To support the podcast, become a patron by going to patreon.com/pushbacktalks or follow us on social media at make_the shift and push_the film.